La Abuelita y Su Nieta was a piece that I created over 10 years ago. And the inspiration for making it was really thinking about what my grandmothers looked like, how they expressed their love, and how my kind of deep desire for physical affection, I was a big hugger, I'm still a big hugger, was met by that grandmotherly love. So in the piece, I really address something that has bothered me for quite a long time. I think initially I started to notice the way that we were erased from view. People that look like me were erased from view. And for me, that meant I didn't see people that looked like me or my family or people in my neighborhood, quite frankly, which usually meant working class people of color, reflected in any kind of media. I didn't see them in the magazines that I would see at the checkout of the grocery store when I would go grocery shopping with my mom. I didn't see them in advertisements or television shows. I remember even watching cartoons and seeing maybe a cartoon character that maybe they were, supposed to reflect me. And then, later in the story, it was like, oh, they're not, they just had dark hair. So that desire to feel connected to a reflection of myself in the world stayed with me. And once I started to really have a serious art practice, that was one of the places that I started to address that. I think growing up, I identified as Mexican because my mom and dad identify as Mexican nationals. And so entering into public school, that's really how I identified. And so as I came into consciousness about a more political identity as I got older, particularly in college, and started to identify as Chicana, which really also positioned me politically. It only kind of cemented my view about our absence from view and what that does to disempower whole communities. And then I really started to think, when were the few instances that I did see myself reflected? And often it was like in a very negative light, and I would say often stereotyped or framed in a way that didn't feel accurate. And so really understanding that as an adult meant that there's actually power at play about like how depictions or lack of depictions impacted communities' ability to engage in the world and shape and self-determine our futures. And I've really kind of committed myself as a political graphic artist to take that understanding and use the art as a tool to make change. And for me, that means that creating artwork isn't done in isolation, that my practice is done often in some form of collectivity, always thinking collaboratively, working with others, sharing ideas, and getting feedback from others. And the practice in and of itself, not just the end work, is what it means to build community. Much of the practice that I engage in is what we like to call art-based community building. And it puts the community building at the center, and that is the space where we create belonging. right? That we come together to make work, to be creative, to feel empowered by that force of creation, in order to be able to shape our world. That is a process. That is something that we have known as human beings since time immemorial. There's pictorial cave paintings all around the world in every indigenous community that tell the story of who we are, right? It's something that precedes written text. It's something that's deeply ingrained in who we are and who we've evolved to be as human beings. And as we continue to evolve that practice, we say more and more about the way that we view the world and who is part of our circles and what that means, and what justice is, and what belonging is, and what accountability is, and how to heal harm. There's just so much that is grounded in the way that we are together. And a lot of that can sometimes be invisibilized when you're looking at a two-dimensional graphic work, but all of that precedes that end piece, and it's done in the process. And so the process is as important, if not more important, than that last graphic piece that you see. But it's part of it. And so you don't always get to capture the full breadth of what it takes to get there. But it is there, and it is part of that process. And for me, I hope that when you do look at the images that are produced through these processes, that you feel the power, as a viewer, that there is that sense of energy that it took to get to that place, to arrive at that end piece. That usually for me it's like a screen printed piece. That sense of energy, power, intention, that it comes through the work. And I think that sparks something in the viewer, and hopefully invites curiosity and conversation, and it inspires others to create. I mean, I think when I see work that I find particularly powerful, the pieces and the kinds of work that I see that inspire me the most are actually the ones that thrust me into wanting to be creative. They get my creativity flowing and get my juices flowing, and then I want to also create. And I think if I can do that, if I can create works and kind of usher along a process that helps bring that energy forth, to be creative, even if that creativity is about making the space for creative solutions to our collective social problems, because there's a lot in the world that needs to be addressed. There's a lot of social injustices that need to be addressed, and much of my work is about social movement building. That is my deepest desire, is that in depicting the world as I see it, that I'm hopefully doing a proficient job, if not much better, in reflecting the power that I see, in reflecting the immense leadership that I see coming from our communities. That isn't always like, they're not the figureheads necessarily, but they're the people in your neighborhood that holds history, that know what's going on, and that have some of the best ideas for solving problems and making things better for all of us. My hope is that I can be a mirror that can help people see themselves, and so that others can see them as well, and that collectively we can celebrate, uplift, and encourage them to keep moving forward. Hi, I'm Melanie Cervantes. I am a artist based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been making art as long as I can remember. I have always loved playing with color and drawing, and here's a piece that I did when I was about 4 years old. I have really been inspired to make work and to make work that reflects my communities and the people in my family and all those who I really see having been erased from view since I was a child. And I really wanted to make work that would fill those gaps, because when I was growing up, I would look at magazines in the grocery store when I was standing in the checkout with my mom, and I wouldn't see anyone that looked like me or the people in my family. And the same was true on TV and in advertisements. It was like we were invisible. So when I started to make work, I started to address that desire to see myself and people that look like me. And this piece that I'm sharing with you today is based on a screen print called La Abuelita y su Nieta, the grandmother and her granddaughter. And I made this piece a little over 10 years ago, to really start to address that gap that I saw in the world. And I continue to make work that, you know, allows me to see images of myself and my community, the people I care about, and do so in a way that reflects us, not as stereotypes, not as flattened out, and empty of agency and power, um, but to show the true power and love that emanates from our communities. And the last slide I'll share is a way that we can keep in touch, or a few ways we can keep in touch. Um, Looking forward to it.